Well, it is officially then noon. Very excited to have you all here today and to have Sean and Jamie joining me. We're going to be just chatting about scaling beyond billable hours, the CEO's playbook for recurring revenue. So it'll be a pretty free flowing. We'll go back and forth throughout the half hour. But if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll definitely get to them towards the end. Um, but here's the key plan for today. We're going to talk about how to assess whether your organization is ready for moving beyond that billable hour, time and materials kind of approach to a more recurring revenue model. We're going to talk about some of the most effective strategies, so bundled services, subscriptions, those kinds of things. We'll get into some of the pitfalls as well, some things to navigate around, and then how to reposition the way that you sell to customers, your clients, while kind of maintaining that premium value that you typically have in a custom environment. So we're going to set the stage. I'm going to throw it over to Jamie just to kind of get us started around, why traditional billable hours is kind of limiting organizations today.
Yeah, thanks, Nicole. So setting the stage for that, we hear all the time from services organizations that billable hours are limiting and that it's really hard to scale because the only way to scale when you are pricing for time and materials is to add more time, to add more people as you get more work. And that can be really challenging to feel like you constantly have to add headcount as you scale. It also can be much tougher to forecast. It's a little bit more unpredictable, and it can make it more challenging as you try to invest more in your business with that unpredictability. So that's why we're talking about what we're talking about today. So I will throw a question back to Nicole and Sean. At what stage do you guys typically see that people need a more scalable recurring revenue model?
I'll start, Sean, and then I'll pass it back to you. Does that sound good? I thought it might be interesting to talk about this a little bit from our own organization's kind of perspective. So we too started out in a very time and materials custom kind of approach. So every contract or every engagement was custom, and it made it hard to sell. It was very unpredictable. So we kind of did this in stages. We started by looking at what we were offering in our custom space and figuring out what are the 3 areas that we want to do all the time, that we do really well, that we could productize as a service and make it easier to sell, easier for customers to buy, make it more repeatable. So that was kind of our first step, productizing services. And then our second step, moving more into a subscription-based model, which we did probably about 2 years ago. And that kind of was driven by a couple of things. The productized services were great, but it wasn't necessarily renewable. Or recurring. So how do we make it something that really allows for better revenue predictability and those kinds of things? But it also was really better for our customers too. So it wasn't just about us. We were really also thinking about were our customers ready for this too. So we were able to build out a more subscription-based model that allowed organizations not to just have some product support or thinking about this kind of productization pathway for a period of 4 months or 6 months or something like that, but really how do you think about it long term? And that was a customer need as well as a Vecteris need to do that. So that's kind of like a little bit about our journey and kind of when we were ready for each step. Sean, what would you add to the kind of this thought?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing that I would add is thinking about what behaviors are changing in the market that's really moving us away from the billables hours model, right? And so when I'll sort of tell it like kind of a funny story. So I live in DC area, and at Georgetown there's a waterfront, and sometimes the boats can come up and dock at the waterfront next to the restaurants. Really cool. One of the boats there that is often there, the name of the boat is Billable Hours, which is kind of funny because that person is sort of suggesting that they're charging their clients where they're sitting on the boat, but clients don't really like that, right? That gig is kind of up now. Customers are hip to this game. I don't know if that boat is like owned by a lawyer, accountant, government contractor, but customers don't appreciate that because essentially what you're doing is you're shifting all the risk to them in terms of managing the contract outcomes that they want. And there aren't incentives for their vendors to do innovative things faster or better. They can just sit on their boat, right? So what we're seeing from research coming out of firms like DCM Insights, that customer loyalty to services business is down by 51% in the last few years. Cross-sell and upsell is down 37% for B2B services. And so the trend is that customers are really demanding outcomes-driven contracts. And they want to share that risk with the vendor, but they also want the upside when vendors can be innovative, especially now that they see technologies like Gen AI, and they're willing to share that upside. And so one of the things that we do most with our customers is having them go talk to their customers at Vecteris. And so one of those questions that we always include in those interviews is really how do you want this offering that we're thinking about putting together? How do you want that packaged? How do you see value in it? How should it be priced? Even before we ask them what the price should be. And so they all have insightful things about. The customers will talk about the way it creates value for them, how they see ROI. They are almost always talking about some kind of a recurring fee that they would expect to be charged. No one is saying, I want to be charged time and materials cost plus contract anymore. So like we're really seeing very clearly that shift from the customer perspective as well.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I think you're totally right about Gen AI kind of speeding this whole process up too.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really having a big impact. So how will companies know, and maybe Jamie, I'll start with you on this one, when they're ready for a recurring revenue model? How would they get ready for that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think first is to note that it doesn't have to be all or nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're thinking about a recurring revenue model, you can run a pilot, you can start with one offering that you have and see how that goes. So you don't have to think about it business wide to begin with. You can iterate from there. But to answer your question on if you're ready to even get started, one of the biggest things is that you have value to consistently deliver. So if you are in a business where you have clients come to you for something, you execute on it and you never hear from them again, and you're kind of always in the new business mode, that might be more difficult to switch to something recurring, because the big thing is that you need to consistently be delivering value to them and ongoing value so that they're coming back and you have recurring value for them. The other big thing I would say is probably the ability to standardize what you do. So you're not recreating the wheel constantly, so that you can take your IP and package it into something that is able to be delivered in a repeatable way. And so those things together, that you can deliver on something in a repeatable way at scale, and that you're able to deliver value to customers in a repeatable way, are the two big things. Mm-hmm. Other people, people can sometimes get worried about my operations aren't where they need to be. It's great if you already have a customer success team, but those are things that you can add over time. Same thing with if your sales team isn't used to selling something that's recurring. It's great if you have that, but I wouldn't say that you need that to get started. That can be taught, that can be added. The big things are, do you have value and repeating value, and can you kind of standardize and package those things to be recurring?
Great. I love that. So a little bit of prioritization in that, the demand from your customers, and then the services themselves. Can they be standardized? That's great.
Yep.
Any particular strategies that you've seen that work really well?
I think probably the most common, you hear the word subscription over and over again, right? People want to move to that subscription model to get the recurring revenue. I think we see that a lot. So I have a customer that, and really this subscription in combination with bundled offerings. And we see them combined a lot, right, to get that recurring model. But I have a marketing firm that I'm working with right now. They have a product that is working with influencers to get insights, and they are packaging that with their existing services, and they have good, better, best bundles, but people can also sign up for an annual agreement. I have another organization that is global. They have good, better, best packages also with subscriptions. And they have their base packages Insights, as an analytics firm. And then their step up packages include additional services. They're bundling products with services, and then they're looking at how can they get that recurring subscription with not only annual contracts, sometimes longer, and then sometimes they're looking at like, can they play around with auto renew clauses as well? But I'd say bundled services and subscriptions are the things that I see the most frequently.
Vecteris certainly has a subscription-based model.
And there's a couple I would add as well. So I'm working with a company that's a IT services organization. They help implement a large financial ERP system. And so they have a big upfront contract to do that implementation. But then it's over. So what they've actually done is, because they've got some great technologists on the team, they've created a few apps to put on that ERP's app marketplace, which one of them their customers get right out of the box to help their offering be, get more value during the implementation, and immediately thereafter, they're sort of like automatically bundled. And then a couple of the others are add-ons that add additional capability. But it really gives them the opportunity to then continually stay engaged with that customer, so that then, maybe a year down the road, 2 years down the road, they want to make some big change, then they've got that continual relationship. Furthermore, what they did is they also took, they would in some cases have more time and materials based support contracts that they would add at the end. They were able to make that more of a managed service, so it's a much more predictable, set of revenue that could be more proactive with that client about making sure to regularly check how well their system is operating, and then just give them an additional level of service. And they did that in a good, better, best model. So they're really taking, both technology and how they're continually operating going forward to stay engaged with their customers, drive even more value and better outcomes of how those customers use that big ERP system.
And any training or certification?
Yeah, we do see training and certifications as well, a fair amount. We have a few customers in terms of leadership training, but another customer, really exciting stuff for helping the construction industry moved to more productized, industrialized construction. But they have an amazing program where they start with an assessment. We see that a lot. Like, people start with a really great assessment, tell people where they are, and then are able to use that to leverage pointed trainings and areas for improvement in their programs. And so it really drives towards that outcome-based training model. And similarly, in some of the organizations we're working with from an HR perspective, they're putting together great subscription packages where they have these baseline set of content that these services organizations have built over time through their IP, assess where companies are, and then be able to really make great pointed training packages for their customers.
That's great. And just as a reminder to anyone, if you guys have any questions for Sean or Jamie about these examples that they're sharing, feel free to drop them in, and we'll make sure we cover that. Common pitfalls when organizations are making this transition. How what are the pitfalls, and then how can they be avoided? Maybe Sean, we can start with you.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we see most often is when people do this, that they try and jump right to features and think of the solutions, and people get all these solutions ideas versus what are the problems they're solving for their customers and the outcomes. And what are those urgent, expensive problems that people really need their support on? Often that leads to underpricing, and so firms will start off and they'll price too low initially, not accounting for the more long-term profitability, often because they're insecure about sort of the robustness of their feature set. And what we see is it's fine to price low for sort of your initial charter pilot group, but then make sure you quickly increase it once you see that first strong case study of outcomes you can deliver. And this, of course, does require a little bit of patience. Oftentimes people want to be action oriented. They want to jump right to the solution. They want to right to launching it across the big set of their customers. But they're kind of fighting some of the fundamental laws of product adoption in the business world. And I think people now know about, you've got your early adopters, early majority and late majority. And so you have to be aware of that and focus first on getting really strong case study where you can demonstrate the outcomes, and make sure that you have you've got a plan for that, and increasing the prices to you so you have that profitability. And I think Jamie talked a little bit about this as well, in terms of bundling is such an important part of the strategy. And so a lot of organizations jump in and they fail to consider how it fits with their other core offerings. So clients need to, so people who are making this shift need to have a clear strategy on how the things you're doing in a productized basis, and it does not have to be everything, but you need to understand how it fits, how it complements, how it interacts with other core offerings. People in the business are going to be nervous about cannibalization. So you'll have to have a strategy for how you are going to bring things in, and have a plan there to clearly communicate both internally with your account teams why this model benefits them and their customers, and then also with the customers themselves. And again, it goes back to being able to have early pilots that show success, and success will follow success. People will want to be on that bandwagon. So focus really carefully at those initial stages, and making sure those early pilots are showing the value.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I was actually on a phone call with someone just this week who's talking about cannibalizing themselves, and they want to do it on purpose. They want to purposefully and intentionally. And I was like, this is great.
Yeah.
Cannibalize yourself before someone else cannibalizes it, right? So, and you can.
That was going back to not just piloting for brand new standalone customers that they were taking the product to, but they were also piloting with customers that they were baking it in with services. And so those two things look different. The value is different, and you're testing different things. You're testing, how does this fit as part of my services package, as a complement to what we're already doing for our customers. And you're testing with maybe a slightly different segment, maybe customers that don't have quite as much money for all the services. How is this working standalone? And then do the packages need to look the same or different? But definitely a pitfall thinking that everything has to look the same across the board, or not testing those two big use cases that we see, bundling or standalone.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I think another thing I see pretty commonly, a common pitfall, is what I'd say is like falling back down the productization ladder when they try to add recurring revenue. So a lot of times that our services organizations are so used to delivering this white glove service, and that's what they feel like is their differentiator in a lot of cases, is that service that they provide that other maybe tech first competitors can't. And so what can be really hard for delivery teams and people executing on the work is when you add a recurring element, or you extend the contract of, like Sean had said, you do a project and then you're going to support them ongoing, is how to manage those asks or hear something from a customer and not then go back to a customized service. Mm-hmm. Just because you have that always on support, making sure that you're putting, and again, this is a test and learn process, but that you're putting boundaries on what you do, what you don't do, where might be an add-on, just so that you're not like over promising either. So you're not going in and saying, we're doing absolutely everything for you, where a lot of times custom engagements lend themselves to more white glove service. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's your model, but a lot of times with these recurring elements, you start to have more parameters around what that ongoing support looks like. So just be careful, make sure you're setting goals and you're making assumptions that you're testing around the level of support, and how much customization, when customization is okay. with some of these things so that you don't just burn out your team from having these recurring models. You want them to still be profitable.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. One of the ways, and thinking about how you manage your customers and make this transition, one of our customers had a really interesting way. I thought a great way of managing this was by requiring like change orders essentially. So if someone wanted something different, and it kind of discouraged the customer from wanting that thing by putting a little bit of process into it, as well. So there were ways to modify behavior slowly of your actual current customers when you're working with current customers. That was one way they did it.
But still delivering value. I want to
100%.
make sure that is not sometimes when we talk about those things like putting barriers up or putting slowly changing behavior, people hear that you're taking things away from their customers. And that's not what we're saying. We still want to test the value and make sure we're delivering the value at the price that we have. So you can have those step ups in service that match the price and that match the value that they're getting. So this is not about taking away that white glove service. It's just about putting some boundaries around kind of your package and the price that you're offering.
Well said. Well said. Okay, last piece here on repositioning your organization to clients. We're kind of talking about that a little bit already, but while maintaining that premium value. So any tips, suggestions, recommendations that you give people on a regular basis to kind of maintain that? Sean, do you want to go first?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, and I think it comes back to what the customers are demanding is that they want certain business outcomes. They've got things that they're trying to achieve. So as you're thinking about where to innovate is to focus on those customer outcomes, the problems you're going to solve for those customers, not just the hours, and be able to show the additive value and talk about how your firm is innovating and doing things to now get them this value faster, by taking advantage of the latest trends of your expertise. And so, we often say start small, but think big, right? So tell people the vision, but find a place where you can start small and really prove out with successful initial use cases and successful initial pilots where you can really demonstrate that ROI. And so making it essentially a high value thing for both your customers and for you, that makes your initial pilots pretty successful. So that's what I would say. Start small, think big, sell your vision, tell them the story. And customers usually want to align with firms who are going to drive that innovation for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jamie, anything you'd add?
Yeah, I think I would just echo that it's not all or nothing, right? It's not a hard transition either. Sean and I are broken records on talking about pilots and beta programs and charter customers and that kind of thing. But in your testing, if you're talking to customers, which we hope that you are, showcasing some of these ideas and getting their thoughts and seeing the sentiment and really going back to you're delivering value, you're like delivering ongoing value. So if you've proven out that you are delivering this value to them in a better way that works for everyone, a lot of times it's an easier transition. It's just fear on our side that people are not going to like the transition. But if you test it and you see that they see more value in it too, that eases our fears about making a transition. And then realizing that it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You can try it out. You could try a kind of a hybrid model with like a project and ongoing support maybe to see how that recurring element goes. You can always try a lot of different things with pilots. I have one organization that they're doing some discounts if you sign up for an annual, right? They're not only offering annual plans, they're allowing you to try out the product and run the productized service quarterly, but you get a discount if you sign up annually. So they're kind of easing people into this transition of going to annual contracts to try to drive those longer renewal periods. But they're trying different things out and seeing what works for their customers.
Makes sense. That sounds good. Good way to ease into it. Well, we are opening things up for questions, so we have about 5 more minutes. So if anyone has any questions you want to put into the chat, feel free. I do have a few to start. I don't know which one of you want to take this, but if someone wants to move on this path, how do they get started? What's the first step that you would recommend that they take, other than, of course, reaching out to us and chatting with us about it? Because we'd be happy to do that. Either one of you want to grab that one?
Sure, I'll start. It's a good question. It's what a lot of people come to us, and people will already have sort of an idea, right? And we're like, oh, I've got some idea for technology. Usually we'll say, okay, before you jump right to your solution idea, let's make sure and go back and it's really solving an actual urgent, expensive problem with your customers. So there's a few ways to make sure you're doing that. I think there's clear advantages that B2B services organizations have in that they've got a robust customer base. You've been doing work, you've got IP that you've built. So we often encourage people to do a little bit of an innovation audit and say, well, where are the places that your customers are really pulling you? You most often have work that you've built up the strongest IP. So do a quick innovation audit of that. And then do a quick customer, voice of customer run where you're validating that what you're thinking about moving on really is there's some demand in the market for that, because that's where we see actually the most often kind of wasted churned effort is where people go really fast to try and build something, but then it turns out customers didn't really want that thing. So that's where we would start. Quick innovation audit. That's one of the things that we always recommend. Quick innovation audit and talk to your customers and validate that urgent, expensive problem is there.
Excellent.
Yeah, I might think a little bit about your vision too. Like, why do you want to do this? What are the results you're hoping to achieve? And run by others in your organization, right? Making sure there's a little bit of internal alignment because there is some cultural change that goes along with this. And so, making sure that we get a little bit of buy-in or that we all understand some of the benefits that we're hoping to get can be helpful before diving in and then, meeting resistance.
Mm-hmm. That's great. I love that. It's a good point. And we do offer now a productization readiness kind of packaging. So if anyone here on the call would be interested in hearing a little bit more about that, definitely happy to walk you through what are the steps there. All right, one last question. So I've tried this, but my partners keep insisting on selling custom billable stuff. So what do they do when that happens? What do you guys think? Jamie, do you want to start this time?
Sure. So I guess first, we hear this a lot with sales teams, consultants, I would take a look at how they're incentivized. So a big thing, like people do what they're incentivized to do. So we see this with sales teams a lot. If they have the opportunity to sell something big and custom and they're going to make a lot more money off of that, that's probably what they're going to try to push. So you just want to take a look at incentives, make sure they make sense for driving the change that you want, and then you're also rewarding the behaviors that you want to reward. I would say is a first step there if you're meeting resistance. And then I'd also just try to understand some of the root. Like if it's something different than that, they feel like you're not meeting the need. You might have to dig a little bit deeper. So maybe doing a little bit of an internal audit to understand why it is that they're trying to sell that, if it's not just a kind of personal motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the one thing that I would add is that selling productized offerings is definitely different motion than selling services. And so what we often encourage people to do is before you throw it over the fence to your sales team, that there is usually a core team innovating on that productized offering, and you need to sell it yourself first, right? You need to actually go through those motions of offering it to the customer, and there's a lot of guidance on how to do that effectively. But those initial, I think we're a broken record, but those initial pilots and making sure you go through the process yourself first, and so that then you can document it, you know it's successful, you can show that it's going to be successful to people before you ask them to then, commit their pipelines to it as well. And so you've got a little bit of that process built out. You've done it yourself first. So that's something we advocate for as well.
Yeah,
That's
when
a really good point, Sean. It's like it's hard to do. So sometimes we're making the assumption that because they've been able to sell custom services, that automatically they should be able to sell products. And so it might just be harder. Those skills are a little bit different, and if we're not kind of equipping people with how to sell differently, how to sell products, how to sell something that's recurring, we might just be setting them up for failure, which then is going to lend them to say, I need to keep selling custom services.
hmm yeah, and you can't avoid that, so you can help them through that for sure. So that's great. Well, thank you, everyone. We're so glad that you were able to join us and chat a little bit about billable hours and then moving to recurring revenue. Thank you, Sean and Jamie, for being here with us. If anyone here is interested and would like to chat a little bit more about your specific kind of situation, we're happy to chat and give you a little bit of some thoughts about how we've seen it done in other organizations. So please do reach out. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Everyone.